I'm happiest in the saddle.
A fellow sportsman.
I am an FBI agent!
Great Scott!
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole!
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
Come with me if you want to live.
Hello, and welcome to Retro Ramble. I'm Charlie McGee.
I'm George McGee.
And this time, dear listeners, we are traveling back to 1987 to review a cult classic and once best ever favorite toy of Charlie's, He-Man. Sorry, it's not called He-Man. What's the adult title, George?
Masters of the Universe.
So yeah, we're gonna be putting on our mullets, getting sweaty, raiding the costume department of whatever film was going at the time,
Playing on a synthesizer.
Borrowing from a lot of other more successful films of the same time, and actors, and even title sequences, it might seem. So, yes, this is a Retro Ramble episode. George and I are brothers. George, what if this is your first time picking up our podcast? What should people expect and put up with in one of our episodes?
Well, as you set it up, we are indeed brothers. And this podcast, we're an independent little podcast. We're all about going back and revisiting the films that Charlie and I grew up with. And it's checking whether these films, do they still hold up? You know, how they were made? Are there any interesting production stories? Have they been remade, rebooted, spun off into a Netflix series? As this has. So, yeah.
Reimagined, one might say.
Yeah, and it's just looking back at these films, giving them a light-hearted look back. I think that's an important thing to say. This isn't an in-depth critical appraisal, whilst we will give you some nuggets of trivia and our opinions on the film. If, you're looking for a high-class film critical appraisal, this isn't the podcast for you.
Yeah, if you're writing a dissertation about Masters of the Universe, we're not going to give you very good factoids, sorry.
Though we do have questions.
so many questions.
So yeah, that's it. It's basically a bit like reuniting with an old friend. So there'll be some jokes and probably some bad impressions and lots of spoilers along the way. So if you haven't seen Masters of the Universe, go and check it out. Or if you haven't watched it in a while, go and check it out.
Yeah, exactly. So we are traveling back to 1987. Out of pure interest, what other sort of films did we have at this sort of time? I mean, we're a few years after Back to the Future. I guess Star Wars was done and dusted and old news. I'm just trying to think what other things. Top Gun would have been out, one of the episodes done recently.
Yeah, Top Gun was 86. I'm trying to think what else you had in 87. I think RoboCop. Was RoboCop 87?
I think it was.
RoboCop, yeah. Predator, Lost Boys. So it was a good year for film.
Yeah.
And then there was Masters of the Universe and Hitman 4. The Quest for Peace, both canon productions. But that's
really
that's a different...
Superman 4. Canon made another film, and Canon made Superman. I would never put the two together.
And that's another Retro Ramble episode for another day.
Yeah. Oh my God, that'll be interesting when we cover that. Probably going to need to do
the first three Supermen.
maybe 3 and 4 together. No, I think there's a lot. There's a lot. Well, there's a lot more in 3 to unpack than there is about in Superman 4. Okay, so without further ado, here it is. It is Masters of the Universe, 1987. Who's it directed by, George? Who gave us this nugget?
Gary Goddard.
Thank you, Gary, and enjoy the show. Let's hit the trailer.
Hit the trailer.
At the far end of the universe, there is a planet ruled by a being of utter evil. And there is only one man who dares challenge him. They are locked in a battle to the death. A battle that will take them across the heavens.
Stop him!
A battle that will finally be fought.
I want them hunted down and brought to me!
Across the face.
Police! Nobody move!
Of Earth.
think I'm gonna need some backup.
Can you show us the way?
No.
From a distant galaxy, they have come to Earth. Dolph Lundgren as He-Man, Frank Langella as Skeletor. Only they have the powers to be masters of the universe. Live the adventure.
Live the adventure. There you go.
I'm sorry, I'm still going on about Superman. So if that's all worked out, ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard the trailer for Masters of the Universe. So George, was this just a hey, let's go and make a movie? How did this film get made? How do we get this nugget? Why are we talking about this?
Well, what we'll do is, so shall I do production first, and then we'll do first memories?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
To set the scene, we need to talk about. Go way back to 1982, back in my prime. Basically about the creation of the He-Man toy line itself. So it was released by Mattel in 1982. Mattel are the makers, also famous for makers of Barbie.
Sorry, I'm trying to do Decepticon.
No, that's Hasbro, I think.
Oh, good marketing by them then.
I think you'll have you fine. So yes, Mattel
was Mask the Transformers ripoff? Was that Mattel Mask?
Possibly.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're catching me out here with my 80s toy line, but I did like Mask. They should bring it back. So yes, Mattel are the makers of Barbie, and back then they were struggling with their toy lines for boys because obviously Barbie's never really struggled. And Mattel also famously passed on Star Wars because they said at the time, movies come and go. It's all about TV shows, so we're going to pass. So Kenner picked up Star Wars. That's obviously, everyone knows about Star Wars toys, and it was, revolutionized movie merchandising. And Hasbro had G.I. Joe. So they did Mattel. What they did is did loads of group testing. They did basically got loads of kids in a room and you play with this. Why do you like playing with this? And lots of market research. And they eventually settled on this barbarian theme that was partly inspired by Conan comics. And it was, pretty much a sort of how do we do something that competes with Star Wars that isn't Star Wars, but it's Conan the Barbarian, but in space. So
I'm in.
But the key point there of difference, their other USP was if you remember, the figures themselves were actually much bigger than G.I. Joe or the Star Wars figures. They were I think 4 inches tall, and they were big and beefy, and that was their sort of point of difference as well. But to help sell it in to retailers, they came up with mini comics, a bit of a backlog story for each figure. But then when they were pitching it to somebody else, they were like, wait a minute, 5-year-olds can't read. And they were like, and that's why we're going to do an animated show. And they were like, okay. So they partnered up with Filmation Animation, who have done loads of stuff over the years. And sorry, I just have to say, and that's also why so much of He-Man looks like a comic. Yes, exactly. They partnered up with Filmation for a 50-50 deal, which premiered on November 1983. And it was the first time a toy line had a cartoon, opposed to the other way around. And if you think about it, that was quite revolutionary. If you think we take it for granted now with Transformers, with G.I. Joe, He-Man was the first to do it.
And they did it well. I mean, we've gone full reversal now. It's gone from being a show with a toy line to the wonderful, absolutely amazing, wonderful culture that comes from Asia, that is Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z, where the toys are the story. And the plot of the story is you've got to have all the toys. I mean, it's just dumb marketing, but hey, we're dealing with 6-year-olds. So yeah, sorry, go on.
Obviously, it was the first time it had been done. And do you remember, you and I joke about this because obviously there's been some great internet mashups that we've probably shared on our socials over the years, but with the G.I. Joe and but I think the Masters of the Universe, obviously, I think because it was a toy line animation, they were quite conscious of the criticism saying, well, it's just an extended advert for your toy line. It's like, okay, well, how do we appease the parent groups? And it was having a moral message at the end of each episode.
Message of the show, I remember.
Yeah.
And because I think we're going to have to talk about in a few minutes our first memories, because, He-Man meant a lot to me. And I was showing, when George was telling me how big the figures are, I was trying to be helpful and hold up my hand, not realizing that my hand at the time holding He-Man would have been slightly differently proportioned.
And the figure that you were holding was imaginary. So I had no idea what size you were referring to.
What, did you expect just to whip out my He-Man toys for you? No, they're locked in a box.
No, sir, I didn't see you playing with your dolls again. But the interesting thing was that Filmation added a lot to the He-Man lore. So the comics had him as a bit of a barbarian space warrior, but Filmation added in so much that influenced it. So they added in the comedy. Everyone laugh at
Cringer, or Cringer, or Cringer, yeah.
They added in the whole Prince Adam alter ego, so that didn't exist in the original lineup. And
word for Superman. Sorry.
And characters like Orko were introduced. So there was this weird relationship that Mattel had with Filmation, that Filmation were wanting to make their own show, and at the same time, like, Mattel were like, oh yeah, but can we push this new character? And they were like, well, no, we're telling a story here, and they were like, oh, but that's a cool character. We're going to turn that into a toy. And so it was, they said it was quite a tense partnership, but obviously it was, I say, the first time it was done, it would go on to inspire lots of other toy lineup cartoons. So Mattel made 38 million on He-Man in their first year.
Wow.
And by 1986, they were making 400 million. So it was hot shit. And obviously they were expanding the line, bringing out all these weird and wonderful characters. But I think talks for a live action feature began around 1985. So that's when producer Ed Pressman started shopping the idea around Hollywood. But Mattel, as part of their deal, they had director and lead actor approval, as well as key caveats on the script, which I'll get onto later. So Ed Pressman took it to Warner Brothers, who offered $15 million. But then he got a better offer from Cannon Films, who offered $17.5 million.
We know that their accounting's up to scratch. They're just printing money.
So, yeah, I mean, Cannon, we've kind of talked about Cannon were sort of low budget, sort of exploitation type movies that seem to make a lot of money out of the video market, with Chuck Norris movies like Delta Force and things like that, and cheap horror movies. But they were, I think, early mid 80s, they were making some decent money. So they were, obviously they were throwing their weight around, and they were very good at like shouting about the projects they were working on. So Mattel went with them. So Mattel had director approval, and director Gary Goddard, bless him, had never directed a film before. However,
doesn't show.
No, I mean it's a pretty well, like, a lot of people give this film shit, but for a first time feature, it's pretty impressive. Goddard did have some interesting credentials. So he had worked his way through working for Disney as part of their Imagineering team. So they are all the guys that develop all the theme park rides. And then he would go on to produce, write, and direct the live action Conan the Barbarian show at Universal Studios. So there's that Conan again. He keeps popping up.
So that's how he knows what a muscly, sweaty man looks like and swings a sword. Okay.
Exactly. And entertaining all those families. But the other interesting thing, so as well as just that, he had his own little production company that extended to like making things like board games. And he had actually done on the side, he had been like a creative consultant for Mattel in the early 80s anyway. So when he heard that they were shopping around this script, and he spoke to the producer, he's like, oh, I'd really like to put my hat in the ring, come see my Conan show. And he's like, oh, yeah, you've got a good show, but it's going to be down to the guys in Mattel. And, I'd be willing to give you a chance as a first-time director, but I don't know what they'll think. And he's like, well, I've kind of got a few friends at Mattel. And Mattel even said, well, when Gary came to us, it was great because it was someone we knew, it was someone we trusted, and we knew that he wouldn't take the piss with the property. So even though he's first-time director, I say he had a relationship with Mattel. So that worked out quite well for him. So they already had a finished screenplay. And I think even before Cannon came involved, the script they kept the budget relatively small. And because of that, they kept the script idea was to have it all set on Earth. However, it was Gary Goddard fought for it to say, well, you've got to bookend the film. You've got to make it feel epic. At least start it and end it on Eternia. And, you could use the same set for the first 20 minutes and the first 40 minutes, and people won't feel like it's a budget contrivance. You won't feel like you're being cheap. And then he added all the stuff about the basically the Masters of the Universe stuff, the rising of the moon and the planets aligning and all that stuff. And he's like, I can just use that in the throne room. And so it was quite a smart move for him, because for me, I would say they're some of the strongest parts of the film.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think it's like you get that the story is the story that's making it a movie, like the movie magic to me, is the stuff that's going on in our world, in the human world, and the stuff that's honoring the fans and linking it all back and showing the source material is the stuff that's going on in Eternia. And yeah, it is better. It's better because I think they've got more range.
Yeah, as I say, Mattel had a few caveats on the script. They were no killing. He-Man cannot kill anyone. So that's why all the stormtroopers, guards.
Not stormtroopers.
They're not stormtroopers. The black guards work for Skeletor are all...
They're not G.I. Joe, by the way. They're not Cobra Command either. No,
they are robots.
Right. So that's why that's why the sparks are coming out. This is, and speaking of Cartoon Network, Samurai Jack would go on to do the same. I can't have a samurai chopping off heads. What about robots? Yeah, of course you can chop off robot heads. Yeah,
it's fine. Dolph Lundgren was already on board before Gary Goddard came on board, but Gary Goddard had concerns about Dolph's very thick Swedish accent.
Why? Why would you worry about his delivery, his ability to say certain words like, one more time? So just for this episode, George and I are going to have a quick sidebar here. Drinking word for this episode. Now, is it A or B? So A, sorceress, or B, weirdo? Because which one of those words, and our listeners can tell us, if you just go for both, you'd be shit-faced. So pick one of those words. If this is two-player, and if one of them can pick the other one, sorceress, or weirdo, and you'll have a lot of fun.
Or C, which is something that Charlie and I still say to each other when we haven't seen each other. Good journey. Good journey.
Going to see. Just don't say goodbye. Don't say goodbye. We've been using that. We've been using that for frickin' 30 odd years. So
still use it. So yes, I mean, we touched on this in our Rocky IV episode. Obviously, that was Dolph's breakout moment. And I think, how many lines does he have in that? Maybe 4 or 5 lines?
Definitely more than this film. Yeah. I would say. I'm not being fair. But there's not a lot of talking by him. Frank Langella has given free reign. I think
we'll get to Frank.
We'll get to Frank.
But yes, so... Yeah, he didn't have much he had to say in Rocky IV, but yeah, this was a lead role, and I think he had an accent coach and stuff like that. But Lundgren had written into his script that he would have 3 opportunities to redub his lines in ADR, and Gary Goddard was pushing for, I want him redubbed. And he even tested people. He's like, I want to test people to dub for Dolph. And I think when it came down to it, there wasn't enough money to pay for the dubbing. And he was just like, oh yeah, he's kind of got it at the third time. That's good enough.
On that, you got to give the sound mixing some credit, because it is evident that every single thing that Dolph says is ADR, which is ironic because they could have just, and they maybe did, reuse a lot of Rocky IV. Those lines that he says in Rocky IV that work so well in this film, which Dolph noises, which I'm going to call from now on Dolph noises.
Not dolphin noises.
No, just there's a lot of grunting from him. But I just wondered.
Well, he spent a lot of time with Stallone, didn't he? So.
But there's that, and this obviously rubbed off on him. But I wonder, was he saying so?
Dolph?
Was he? Oh, wow, that sounds weird. Sweaty, rubbing off. It's almost as if maybe the director might have dropped in some grunts when Dolph was saying something else. Maybe.
maybe. So yeah, let's get to Skeletor.
Well, we need Skeletor.
You blithering boob.
Is there? Are we finished with production checks? I think we need to cover our first memories at some point.
Let's take a sidebar. I mean, I'm moving on to casting now. Yes, we had talked about Dolph, but we'll get back to Skeletor. But let's talk about first memories. So for me, this is a very important film because I'm fairly sure I'm going to have to check out the timeline. I'm going to have to go back, but I'm fairly sure this is the first film I saw at the cinema. I saw it at Jesmond Picture House, which sadly no longer stands. It is now my local Sainsbury's.
Though technically you could watch this in there on your phone or tablet. With free Wi-Fi.
A time machine. he's back again watching that film in the corner. Said something about revisiting his childhood. So yeah, I think this was a family outing. Yeah, we went to Jesmond Picture House and I absolutely loving it. And I don't know if Mum was there, but Dad going, well, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I don't know, what were your thoughts on? Can you remember how you? Because it was weird because obviously I remember playing with He-Man, but I was 4 when this came out. So I was really on the tail end of the He-Man craze. Whereas you would have been, I was probably playing with your toys, wasn't I?
Yeah. And, I was left, right and center. I mean, just so you can date this would have been the old TV room where there is now a fireplace before it had a fireplace. I can remember playing in that room. This was a long time ago, and I had a He-Man, like you'd hit him and his chest would rotate and then he'd have scars. And obviously there was a Skeletor one. There was many different versions of He-Man. I can't remember having a lot of baddies, but
you had Battle Cat, didn't you?
Of course. Yeah, but he was like not as convincingly Cringer without the Battle Cat armor on because he was in war mode or battle mode. But yeah, no, that was like kind of my first foray into any sort of storyline character, because there was, before that for me, it was just all Lego. It was Lego and E.T. That's what I was into.
And this is how I keep reminding people, this was back when Lego didn't have any licenses. They just they had their own stuff. Spaceships. I was just making spaceships and trains out of everything.
No, they didn't have enough wheels to make even one car. So it was just trains and spaceships. But no, so this was big because the cartoon was on. I was watching the cartoon. I had the toys. So as you say, this was where it first worked. Where they had the animation running in tandem with the merchandise. And I was hook, line, and sinker, or Mum and Dad were in terms of. Because I think I had about 3 or 4 of these toys, and they were probably going, judging by the amount of money they made off them, they were very successful. But no, about this film, that's why I was asking. I was interested to know what your first memories would be, because I kind of remember us like not thinking this was a bad or not. Like we've watched this film a few times, I think, over the years. I think we like the sort of magical. It's set in California on Earth with Courtney Cox, who was obviously gorgeous, and I know that you had a thing about Strickland. I can't remember what his real name is.
I had a thing about or for Strickland. What are you on? What are you trying to suggest?
I was making a joke, but I'm just saying this. We'll get back. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get back to casting, and we are going to talk about the actor who plays Strickland in Top Gun, because this would appear to be his biggest movie.
You mean authority figures?
Yeah, I think over the years we haven't thought this was a bad film. And I mean, we will get into the film and we'll probably give our final thoughts, but it's by no means terrible. And you got to remember, it's a kids' film, you know. So do you know why I think you and I are probably more affectionate on this? I mean, I say I've rose tinted glasses.
Yeah. I mean, I've got emotional ties to it, being one of the first films I saw.
You're very young,
cinema, very young and impressionable. I am the very impressionable type, but I think it's because you and I have frequently gone back to it that it hasn't been like that. Oh my God, I haven't seen this film in ages, and oh my God, it's dated so badly. I think because you and I have regularly watched it every few years, and I mean, to be fair, I don't think neither of us have owned it on DVD, so we haven't watched it in a while. But it's one of those films that is like muscle memory that we always talk about. That I know like a lot of the lines to, and all the beats and things like that. But we always knew it was a bit shit. But it was sort of like, I think we quickly but we weren't afraid. It was a guilty pleasure, and I know some people don't like that term, but yes, we know it's a bit shit, but it's an enjoyable watch.
I think the way to look at it is that this was a film for kids, an adaptation of a kid's toy that I was a massive fan of the toy. I like so much so, and I think you were too. And the cartoon was still going even after the film had been gone. You know, that's the thing you got to understand, is that the film came out and we were still the cartoon would have still been popping up, and it still would have
been on syndication for a while.
And Skeletor was such a good bad guy. He was just so angry. so yeah, just so I think the whole He-Man concept was, yeah, as you say, we've kind of ingrained it because we've gone back. We've seen nothing new, like scene for scene. When I knew what was coming, I was like, when are the hoverboards coming out? But we'll get into this. Let's go back to casting, because I think we've covered off the first memories. But I don't remember us hating this film, but I think you've explained why.
Yeah. Because we were the key audience.
Yeah, and also, but big actors who've gone on to big things. I mean, it doesn't have a killer soundtrack. It's got killer opening credits. I don't know where I've seen them before.
Whoa. You say it hasn't got a killer... It has got I think it's got a great soundtrack.
It's got a great soundtrack, but it doesn't have it doesn't have Kenny Loggins or...
But do you know what it does have, which I only noticed this time round? I'm living in a box.
I did. Is that when they're in the car and he's trying to make out? It's like, it's living. Are you going to tell them, or should I?
Why don't you tell them? Is this another memory?
Not really related to the universe in any way.
Your gym routine?
I once was forced to do a gym routine with forward rolls and triangles and stuff. And my track was living in a box. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just move on.
Wait, there's more, because it was a school thing, and every year I had to do a gym routine, and I also had to do a gym routine the same day. And being the 80s, it was, well, Charlie and I will just share the same tape. And I can't remember, it was probably a Now or something. So what was on the other side of the tape around the same time was Johnny Hates Jazz, Shattered Dreams. So I did my gym routine to Shattered Dreams, and I will never not listen to that song and shudder because of that. So yeah,
I think I blocked mine out because I was just like, yeah, this is ridiculous. I think I was enjoying the music too much, you know. It's just like
Living in a Box. Who's that sung by, Charlie?
I couldn't tell you.
No, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Should we get back on the train to Casting Island?
Yeah, so let's go to casting. So we've covered. So one more time, Dolph. One more time. It's like you must have been really tired. A lot of ADR. Who else have we got in this? We've got.
So let's talk about.
We've got Mustache in Arms.
Charlie, can I be frank?
Yes, you can be frank.
Can I be frank, Glengala? Gary Goddard realized he had the issue with Dolph's line. He's like, okay, with the speech issues, he's probably not the guy to center around this film. So he centered the film around Skeletor, and that's why he gets the sort of monologues and things like that. Cannon didn't like the idea of Frank Langella playing Skeletor, because I think he was seen as like, you know, classically, he's a theatre actor and
too thespian.
And they thought that a bodybuilder should play Skeletor, because obviously in the Skeletor figure, it's basically He-Man's body, but just with different
same mold,
head, isn't it?
Same mold.
Gary Goddard wanted somebody who could be believably act behind the prosthetics and a mask. I've got a note here. Stop being sexy, Skeletor. So Frank Langella wanted Skeletor to look more like he did in the cartoon. So like less, like more like chest on display.
More G strings.
And was actively working
leotards.
Was actively working out for it. And Gary Goddard objective was like, no, I don't want Skeletor to be sexy. He needs to be like a serious threat. So that's why he's got the cloak and the robes. And
looks like Death out of Wayne's World. Sorry, not Wayne's World. Bill and Ted's.
Yeah, pretty much.
Good prosthetics, though. Good prosthetics on him. I mean, poor guy probably struggled getting out of his monologues. Yeah, I mean, we haven't got into sort of the film overview, but I mean, Frank Langella, I'll just sort of need to caveat up front. So Frank Langella is currently being accused of some misconduct, abuse. There's some allegations against him. He was fired off a Netflix program, but that's still ongoing. But I want to sort of put that out there. But I just want to say, in this, he is fantastic. He is he is the USP. He's like, you can see why Gary Goddard fought for him, because he's devouring that dialogue. And it's a bit like we were saying in Gladiator. It's just a really good actor turning an average script into something really sort of weighty prose. And apparently there's a lot of lines that Frank Langella chucked in himself in there. Well, you use the word monologue, but it just feels like it's my moment, and it encapsulates everything. And I think I think we'll get on to this towards the end. I think our friend Kevin Smith has a lot to thank for those, because you have what was in the cartoon and this. And then you add Mark Hamill into the mix, and wow, you've got lightning in a bottle. But I mean, it's a great, like, this whole power. It's like you really understand that they've been fighting against each other like forever, and that's in all of this hate. And it's like, all I want to do is rule Eternia. I'm not asking for much. But yeah, so you've got to give him credit where it's due. So do you want to finish off casting, and then we'll quickly talk about what it was like to watch again?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I think the thing that we need to sort of cover is that, as well as sort of Gary Goddard's tweaking things for the script, he also came up, and I think one of the gripes about this film is it drops, outside the heroes, it drops a lot of the villains. So whilst you do have Beast Man, or I think he's just called Beast in this, he's awful.
My favorite for being so bad.
No, you've got Karg, who's got the amazing white, massive afro mullet type thing.
He was interrupted from going to a heavy metal concert in the 80s. He was not happy.
He's awesome. Saurod, who's the lizard guy, and Blade, who
not that Blade,
but
he has got swords.
Now the guy who played Blade, this is getting your money's worth. So he was played by Anthony DeLongis, and he was also the stunt coordinator for the film, and he also doubled as Skeletor in all the fight scenes as well.
I was going to ask who doubled in the fight scenes, because I said that can't be Frank Langella fighting He-Man.
Yeah. I mean, he had some nice things to say about Dolph, because apparently, again, due to budget constraints, Dolph did pretty much all his own stunts, because they couldn't find a stuntman that had his physique, because obviously is he 6'4" or something?
He's a mountain, and he's got the time he had the pyramid upside down shape. Was the way you describe his body. So yeah, you'd know if it wasn't him, whichever delicious stuntman mullet combo you went for. There's only one Dolph mullet combo going in that room. So, and he does a great job in terms of physicality.
You can see there's a moment, or the hoverboards moment, where he's whizzing down the street and he looks like he's shitting himself.
Yeah, I'm gonna fall.
I've made a huge mistake by my agent. So yeah, that's the main sort of bulk. I mean, I think we also have to, we shout out about how brilliant Skeletor is, but also Evil Lynn as well. I think it's Meg Foster. She is, again, I've got my notes. Evil Lynn and Skeletor are in another movie.
Yeah, I was going to say that she's definitely in another film. Like, she keeps on turning up, and like, who are these imbeciles and these idiots? And it's almost like just to jump ahead, that bit at the end when Skeletor's like, do you not realize I'm about to like totally take over here and you're fussing about? You know, it's I don't know, they do seem to be on a different level. So George, going back and watching it, what was it like for you? Because as we said early on, we've watched this film a few times over the years. I would say so much more. There weren't a lot of surprises, if I'm completely honest, and I'm okay with it. I'm going to just throw this in the ring now, so we're on the same page. I had no problem going back and watching this film, and it hasn't changed my opinion of this film at all. And I didn't know why until you said to me, we have watched this a few times over the years. We have stuck this on, you know? Well,
it's a funny one. In our last episode in Gladiator, we talked about the whole sort of DVD thing and how it was one of those first DVDs that we just nailed repeatedly. And I think what happened with this film is that we hammered it on video because, I don't think either of us would have rushed out to buy it on DVD. So it's a good, 15, 20 years, unless it's been on TV and we've seen it. But I think it's so ingrained in our sort of consciousness or memory that, as I say, that's why we know it so well. And there is that nostalgia of why we're both happy to sort of revisit it. But yes, I think you and I, you texted me because you watched this a few days after me, but I've got the same thing. The opening credits is like, okay, somebody's ripping off Superman.
Same house though, it's not ripping off when you look at it that way. When it's like, okay, so change the colors, slightly change the music, and we're good to go. We can't use the Superman opening credits. People will know. They'll never know. Rainbow out the colors, put him as the universe. It'll be fine.
And yeah, arguably, I suppose they did own the rights to Superman then. So yes, that's kind of they're probably their legal argument.
Jarring. It's jarring when you see the credits arriving the same way,
and especially like the music. The soundtrack is awesome in this. I think it's Bill Conti. Obviously, he's quite a famous composer, but it's really it's that operatic, it's bombastic, and it sort of levels up. It papers over some of the cracks of it being a low budget film.
Yeah, and I think you got to keep going back to this, like, and I guess my opinion of this film has differed over the years. But if you separate the disappointment from the fans of the franchise, the fans of the toys, this as a children's film from the 1980s, it stands up.
Yeah.
If you look at it, it's got actors who've gone on to have very successful careers, been in very momentous films. It holds together, as you said, in terms of the act structure, the fact they start in Eternia, the plot, it's very coherent. There's a MacGuffin, they got to get it. And if not, such and such. It's predictable, it ties together, but I don't know. Yeah, I think, as I said in the intro, the only thing you could, it's like kind of like Oblivion, is like, it's a very derivative. When you look at the other films of the time, it's like, okay, so we take a little bit of Star Wars, we take a little bit of
Superman, a bit of Back to the Future.
Yeah, the guy Back to the Future, wasn't he in a band? Yeah, but he played guitar. Okay, so you're in a band, you play synthesizers. And you know how the guitar was a plot device in Back to the Future? Well, the synthesizer is going to work. Oh my God, we're on a roll. Okay, and then Stormtroopers. Okay, give it to me now. It's like they were just going, but you could imagine the guys at Canon doing that. Okay, and what else can we go for? It's like Conan, the guy, the director. Yeah, okay, let's do that. So It does. I think when you look at it under a microscope, but if you just step back for a minute and go, how else were you going to do it? How else were you going to? Otherwise, if you look, you're going to have to set the whole thing in Eternia. Yeah. You're going to have to spend a fortune on special effects, on costumes, on locations. You're going to have to film everything in Hawaii or Alaska. It's like, it would be very, very difficult and expensive to do.
We're kind of leaping ahead here, but that is...
I'm all over the place.
No, but I think that's the reason why I think since like the late 90s, early noughties have been trying to get another film off the ground, and the stopping point is the cost. Is like, I remember, I think John Woo was involved in the early noughties. David Goyer, the guy who wrote Blade and wrote the Batman, the Nolan Batman movies, he wrote he wrote a version, and apparently it was going to be like, if you think it could be, and around that time of the early noughties, it's like, oh, well, it's a space version of Lord of the Rings. And I think his script was quoted to be like $300 million picture because of the scope, the scale, the amount of effects required. And I think that's it, like, to do it properly. And that's why it's always fallen back to animation. It's like, oh, well, yeah, we can do that in animation, but doing that live action, the scope and scale is going to be huge. But it's still in production hell. Them trying to, I think they've got somebody cast, they've got a director, but yeah, who knows? It probably will come out. I think they were saying potentially in the next year or so, but we'll see.
They should get the guy who's playing Reacher in the Amazon series.
That's a great shout. They've cast some sort of teen sort of actor. He's from some like teen soapy type thing. I've never heard of him, but yes, it is. I say it's still. They've been trying to remake the film for years, but I think it just keeps falling down to budget.
Well, for me, they don't need to, but we'll get on to that later. But in spin-off, why they don't need to make a film, in my opinion.
I do like the fact that it drops you straight into the action. And again, it's very canny sort of budget setting. Okay, we're not going to show a battle. We're going to show an aftermath of a battle. Skeletor's already won. He's taken over Castle Grayskull.
We're not even going to show Grayskull. We're going to show what do you call them? It's a bit of artwork. It's
matte painting.
Matte painting. We're going to show matte painting, but it like levels in with that. But then it's a plot device. It's like they were nowhere, and then they were everywhere. They came out of nowhere, and then we find out that's a plot device, and it becomes then we get all everybody's introduced very quickly.
But Charlie, how do we know it's a plot device? Who would give us such exposition? It's me, Gwildor.
Drink. Oh my God, Gwildor. It's like
comedy relief.
Do you have any trivia on why he's called Orko? Why he's called Gwildor, not Orko?
I'm not Yoda. How many times I have to keep telling you? So the reason they've changed it from Orko to again Gwildor, like a brand new character, taking
him away from being a wizard, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, it's just down to budget. The fact that Orko was like flying around all over the place. They said they just couldn't have a guy on wires and make it look convincing. So they've reimagined that comic relief. And instead of a magician, he's an inventor. But apparently the guy who played him is...
Recognize the voice from something else.
Billy, come on, Billy.
Billy D. Williams.
Not Billy D. Williams. That's some very convincing prosthetics. Billy Barty, apparently he was in the industry for so long. He was one of the munchkins from The Wizard of Oz. So apparently he was like an amazing presence on set, always making jokes and
telling stories, probably.
Yeah, really lovely guy.
Just one time I had to deliver a horse to the trailer of Marlon Brando. No, you could tell that he had some gravitas in his voice. Yeah, it works. I think the reason I think you and I talked about this, they were like, it didn't seem practical. They weren't going to redo Orko. They couldn't do the whole making spells and stuff. Okay, well, let's gadgets, synthesizers, music. Let's go. Yeah, well, we've got him. We've got even little Courtney Cox. I mean...
So yeah, Courtney Cox, this was her breakout role, because before then, and if you know your Courtney Cox trivia, yeah, she was
She does a really good scared face with her hair. No! She does it about 4 times in the no!
She was the girl from the Bruce Springsteen video, and I think when she auditioned for this film, she was still riding high off that. Oh, it's the girl from the Bruce Springsteen video. This was her first role, obviously pre-Friends, and I don't think she did much between this and Friends. She's fine in this, she does the role. She's earnest, what have you. Kevin is fine.
Has Kevin been in much else for us? He seemed familiar. No is the short answer, because I checked. No, he hasn't really been. Oh, he was in. That's right. He was in Star Trek. He was one of the he was the equivalent of Riker in Voyager. The Riker character, first officer. First officer, whatever you want to call it. Yes, commanding officer, whatever. First officer. I don't know. We're not into Star Trek. We appreciate it. We watch some of it, but we're not into the whole
don't
lore.
Don't
get angry. We don't even like Star Wars. We watch tons of that.
As you say, Kevin's not Marty McFly, but he's in a band. He's hoping to get his demo out there. Courtney Cox is at the Enchantment Under the Water dance. Is it? It
is that. It is totally like borrowing like ideas from movies like Frank Sinatra. We got that guy.
I love that bit where there's the whole bit where the Skeletor sends the bounty hunters. Sorry, mercenaries. They're mercenaries. They're not, and it's the exact same lineup from.
And he's pacing around them. He's pacing around them. It's like, we made this up on our own. I made the exact same note. It's like Darth Vader stalks the bounty hunters. I'm sorry, no, rewrite that.
I want them taken alive. No, in carbonate. No, I didn't say carbonate. So yeah, you've got that whole bit where they're chasing Courtney Cox around the
department store,
the high school dance, and then all of a sudden they're in this dodgy back alley, and it's sort of like, this is the only set we've got. It's fine, just go for it. It's like, hang on, that's supposed to be the back of the school. There's like neon lights, and it's so like
really, really dodgy. Yeah, it's like, where did she go? Did she escape the school and cross to a dodgy area? No, it's the back of the school. Just go with it.
But there's some okay-ish action. I mean, there's some of the sword stuff between Blade, not that Blade, and Dolph Lundgren is okay. It's this is the point I'm going to keep coming back to. It's passable, and like you got to remember, this is a film for kids, so the parents would be like, meh, like our poor father was. But like, it's that. It's like, it's swashbuckling, they've got, but let's talk about the one thing we haven't talked about at all. One of the coolest thing about He-Man that they've done, which nobody else has done very well, is like combining the whole Lord of the Rings with freaking laser guns and technology. The fact that they've got part technology for transport. There's no horses, it's like everything's motorized, but then everything else is kind of old lorry stuff, and it works really well, I think. Well, that's it. I do like, there's a lot of world building and there's a lot of lore that I say it just drops you into it, and there's some stuff that it just expects you to say, okay, just go with it. Just go with it. This is what we do. This is how we deal with it.
They've got holograms. They've got tracking devices. They've obviously got portals. And then they've got the collar, which is something out of The Running Man.
The collar of truth.
The collar, no, George, the collar of
is it
True Tone? It's the True Tone collar. Like, what do the pop stars use? Oh
yes.
It's like, there's one of those things that certain pop stars can't sing without. It's the auto-tune collar. It's like when Kevin's talking with it on, it sounds like
he borrowed it off Will.i.am.
Yeah, it's like, I can't sing without this. And Strickland.
So yes, also
biggest movie ever for him, I would say.
He's most active in this. He's rolling around with his leather trench coat.
No, but the scenes he's in the majority of Act 1. He's not in Act 2, and then he's in Act 3. So it's like he's in it more than He-Man. I bet you if you checked who's got more screen time, I would argue he's probably got more screen time than, or he's at least.
Charlie, do you think this shit is Russian? Is it Russian? More commies under the bed.
That was really, and you know what? I mean, because we've watched this film so much, I'm not even referring to my notes, but that is in them. Because at one point, let's talk about the
Man-at-Arms and Teela.
Teela and Man-at-Arms, and the fact their weaponry. Let's talk about the armory. So this is an Eternia shotgun, also remarkably similar to a shotgun from planet Earth. Here is an Eternia hand grenade, also remarkably similar to a World War II
grenade. Shootout in a music store. It's a synthesizer.
And you can even see, the cannon, whatever they've done is that the blasters, the laser, whatever they're called. I think they're called blasters, what they refer to them. Maybe there's not a line of dialogue that refers to the weaponry, but they are just basically 1980s sidearms with plastic stuck on top. But it works, and the laser works. And then we've got the hoverboard scene, which you were talking about, where Dolph is looking a bit scared.
He's looking a bit scared because he's obviously going at extreme speed on a very small platform. And then there is some very shaky green, what we're talking about, green screen effects or what have you, composite.
But for the sign of the time, it was actually quite impressive. I think this highlights the genius of films like I would say the same sort of time. Batteries not included. Was late. It was at 88 or 89. But like Back to the Future didn't use much of it. You know, that you could see there was that electricity type stuff going on.
Am I safe in thinking this predates Back to the Future 2? Was Back to the Future 2? Wasn't it? It was at 89.
Yeah, that was much later. Yeah.
So you could say that Back to the Future was ripping off He-Man, arguably.
What, you mean the time travel?
No, the hoverboards.
Oh yeah, there's that. No, I was just talking about that electricity effect that they used for the key at the end.
Oh yeah,
that's seemed to be like a cheap version of what Spielberg Zemeckis does in Back to the Future. So yeah, I mean, you could see where the technology was at this time. My point was that films like Back to the Future, you only used it a little bit, and this film maybe dipped their toe in just a little bit too much.
We've pretty much, got ourselves to the epic finale. You're back in Eternia.
Solid Act 3 for me.
You've got
happy
this.
With it. Happy
you've
with
got this. You've got this amazing set that apparently was a huge set. Took up 2 sound stages, and you got this epic battle between He-Man and Skeletor. Who turned off the lights? So
turns into a music video, doesn't it? At one point.
Well, the reason for that is because
it's not the same place. They ran out of money.
Canon ran out of money, and they basically shut down production when they literally, I think they had something like 3 days left of filming for that last battle. They literally got to the point where their swords cross, and that was it. And then kind of like, no, we've run out of money. You can just cut around it, right? And Gary Goddard was like, I don't have a final battle. And the producers from kind of were like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. Just work around it, cut around it. And he's like, I can't do that. And it ended up that I think Mattel came and had like basically pulled them out of it because Canon hadn't paid. So for the rights fee, Canon hadn't paid all the money that they'd promised to Mattel. They kept like delaying, saying, oh yeah, the money's coming. And Mattel were like, right, don't worry. You don't have to pay us that $1 million or $1.5 million that you said you would pay us. You use that money to get the film made, like those last days filmed. And so, yeah, they basically forego the last payment, and they got the shooting done in 2 nights. And Gary Goddard's like, his creative thing was like, okay, when the swords clash, all the energy and light is sucked out of the room. And that's how we're going to get around this. We're going to cut all the light costs and lighting all the sets. And that's why we're 2 guys fighting in the dark.
Clang, clangity clang.
So yeah, it's a real shame because obviously it could have, like, even the set design is talking about how he took inspiration from like Errol Flynn movies when designing the set for like, oh yeah, we're going to have this amazing.
We're going to go upstairs. There's going to be this massive, an Errol Flynn sword fight in He-Man would have probably calmed the critics. The
crickets too.
Nobody's going to calm the crickets. They're on their own freaking agenda. Yeah.
But the one that I do have, again, going back to Strickland, so the happy ending of Lubitsch's like, yeah, I'm happy here, and he's got a new wife. What happened?
Where from? Did he buy her?
Did he buy her? That I do have questions.
It's sort of like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't need to go back to that.
I'm happy here.
I don't need to go back to that commie infested shithole, you know?
It's like, we've been here 5 minutes and you've already bought a woman.
And you've got a new wardrobe and you're happy. And yeah, I guess it makes sense. So what you're basically saying, George, there wasn't enough character development of Lubitsch's character.
He just wanted an Eternia bride.
Yeah, I was in Korea. I love it that they were quoting that, and then because it was too late to say I was in Nam.
Yeah,
and now it's Gulf War. So yeah, I think, was anybody else considered for the part of Lubitsch? I don't know when we would cover that. Are there any? Is it time for that moment, George? Is it time to let in Jeff and Celine?
Go on.
I've got nothing. I've
got one, but it's a disappointing coulda woulda.
You know what? They're driving past in an Uber that they've stolen, and they're just shouting out one name, so that it's going to be a very quick coulda woulda shoulda.
Okay.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
So, do you want to introduce coulda woulda shoulda?
So coulda, woulda, shoulda, for those who aren't aware, is where George enlightens us onto the actors who were considered for the roles but didn't get them in the end. And normally it's a very long list of A-listers or B-listers and sometimes directors. But I'm guessing this time it was a Dolph Lundgren movie from the off.
It was a Dolph Lundgren movie. I say, they're quite big boots to fill for He-Man and quite a big physique. So yeah, I think a lot of people were just like, it's got to be him. And obviously he was high profile.
So hot right now. I mean, look at all that sweat. But I'm guessing for Skeletor. There was some chat for him. No, I couldn't find any casting for Skeletor. I say apart from Cannon wanted a bodybuilder over Frank Langella. Stop being sexy, Skeletor. But the one I have is a debunked coulda, woulda, shoulda. So apparently, despite internet rumors, so Sarah Douglas, who played Ursa in Superman 2, was apparently lined up to play Evil Lynn. Right.
But and obviously we talked about Meg Foster playing Evil Lynn, but it was actually debunked in our friend Timon Singh's book, Born to be Bad. Sarah Douglas, he interviews her all about Superman 2, and I think he addresses that rumor, and she says, no, I wasn't approached for that role.
I do remember that, yeah.
So there you go. There's a coulda, woulda, shoulda, but it definitely didn't happen.
And is the actress who plays Julie's mum, so Courtney Cox's mum in this film,
Christina Pickles? Yes, they have.
So it's not. No. I'm just saying it's not the same person as Evil Lynn because they look really similar. I know there's the whole thing that she turns into it, but I'm like, her mum looks a bit like Evil Lynn, so you could kind of. You could forgive Courtney Cox's character for thinking that her mum was Evil Lynn, and the fact that they kind of look a little bit. When I was younger, I thought it was like one of them had dressed up as a mum.
Yeah, no, I remember thinking that as well. No, I was getting confused with the person, the lady that plays Sorceress. Is Christina Pickles, who would go on to play Courtney Cox's mum in Friends.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah. So now, I can remember her saying nasty things to poor Chandler. Okay, so George, we've been talking a lot about why we love this film, why it was enjoyable to go back and give it a retro ramble. But as we mentioned earlier, the critics weren't so happy. The super fans of the toys weren't happy with how they felt it was too disjointed from the toy franchise. Why didn't we get a second one? I mean, how this didn't perform as well as you might have expected, given the brand recognition.
Well, yeah, that's it's an interesting point, because I talked about earlier that like the huge success of the toys, from 1982, 83, when the Filmation cartoon came out, and it kept growing and growing, and they made 400 million in 1986. However, the profits took a massive dive down to 7 million in 1987. That's quite a drop.
Wow. And they're blaming the film, obviously.
No. This is before the film came out. And I think that this is what contributes to why the film wasn't a huge success, or one of the reasons.
They weren't riding the wave.
No, and that's it. It just the bubble had burst on the He-Man toy phase. They admitted that they were overextending lines, they were overproducing stock, to the point that like people like Toys R Us were sending shiploads of stock back, saying, well, no one's buying these toys because they'd extended the range so much you couldn't actually get like characters like He-Man and Skeletor anymore, because they were like, oh yeah, you can get Snake Man and Waterface and all that jazz. And yeah, so as the bubble burst, and so by the time the film came out, no one was interested in He-Man anymore, apart from maybe the hardcore fans who took
like
umbrage. You like us, who took issue with the fact that it wasn't a faithful recreation. But I think the other reason why it wasn't a financial success, which it should have done, because as we've talked about, it's not a terrible film. Yes, I think for Canon Films output, it's one of their, it looks great, the production values are great. But I think because Canon were the engine was there was very little fuel left in the engine. There was very few pennies left in the bank. They put hardly any money into marketing, and I think it was left to Mattel to pick up the marketing bill. So that's why it probably wasn't as much awareness. And I think it fell down to distribution as well. It wasn't playing in enough cinemas, or it was only playing the sort of the matinee showings in America. So only like small kids were going to it. Wasn't even getting that, teenage audience. So yeah, there just wasn't enough money to promote it, essentially, and a dwindling toy base, so they didn't strike while the iron's hot, and it might have been a completely different story if they'd made it in 1984, 1985. But yeah, by 1987, that ship had, truly sailed, and they were probably on to Transformers. And I don't think Turtle Mania had started yet. I think that was more like 88, 89.
Yeah, that was a bit later. No, but I mean, I just remember, know what I mean? Just looking at this, it just sounds like canon imploded. And it's a shame because I don't know why, like you used the term glossy. This isn't a bad film. It's a good action film, but it fails in the number one area of replicating the franchise in live action. Okay. So it does some parts of that well. Like we talked about how cool the Grey Skull thing is and how it's bookends the film beginning and I like the world building in it, but this is a children's film. But you could see them saying, yeah, but the fans were coming expecting this. They wanted it to be just like the cartoon, and you've gone somewhere else. You kind of homage it, but it's weird to think, but there was a point where they really, there was talk of a sequel, wasn't there? They did believe in the project from the beginning.
Yeah, as you say, we'll go on to, we'll chat about that in Suspicious spin-offs and sequels. So yes, there definitely was the appetite for a sequel, despite the dwindling interest in the stories, in the toys.
Well, yeah, it just seems like, as you say, the ship had sailed, that they missed their chance. The time to do. If you're going to do it, you either do it while things are riding high, or like Transformers 30 years later. You wait till those kids are adults.
Nostalgia, baby, nostalgia. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all we need to say on that matter.
Okay, well, are there any suspicious spin-offs? Should we first start off with the more recent Netflix series? Should we cover that off slightly? Or because we're not going to cover that in an episode.
I'm going to leave that to you because I've only seen one episode. So this is Masters of the Universe Revelations, and apparently it's been very controversial. So it's by Kevin Smith.
And not to be in any way linked with our own Retro Ramble Revelations, which is where George and I cover films that missed us during the 80s on our Patreon. No, so Revelations. As you've heard me talk about what I was the target audience. I even have grown affection for this film over the years because of that initial, and I feel like it's lovely dovetailed with Masters of the Universe. It's crazy where it goes. It gives you more than you'd ever imagine. It world builds in a way that you didn't think was possible. I'm happy with it in terms of it's a very, everyone knows the criticism that's leveled at it, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I think you need to go and see it. Also go and see it. Watch it on Netflix when you can. It's great. It's some of the. It's like it took me back to watching He-Man as a kid. That's the best way I can say it. Unfortunately, it's like you liked He-Man when you were a kid. Well, imagine that was made in 2020. It's that. So it's like, did you know all the things you liked about He-Man? Well, they've slightly been updated by 35, 40 years. So yeah, but you've got to go with it. Kevin Smith's a safe pair of hands. It's got comedy, and my last word on that, Mark Hamill is freaking playing Skeletor, and that alone, and just like in this film, he's getting a lot of screen time. That alone is worthy of it, if nothing else. But all of the supporting characters are brilliantly done. The world building is very interesting. It's batshit crazy where it goes. It expands the universe. So it's like, if you are a real fan, and I think maybe the real fans hate where it's gone with it, but like, you've got to change, man. We've got to grow. Yeah, we've got to do different stuff. And for me, I was personally, by the end of it, sold on it. So yeah, I liked it because I haven't enjoyed for me, it's like the nostalgia. It's like nostalgia, Kevin Smith plus Mark Hamill. Sold.
Yeah.
So
I need to get back into it. I mean, I think it's I have to just jump back.
Very, very post pub, by the way. Like few beers come back from the pub, stick that on. It's brilliant. It's just like Skeletor monologuing by Mark Hamill. It's like just give me more. Just give me more. Yeah.
Well, I actually tried to, as this was the first film, Master of the Universe was the first film I saw at the cinema. I tried to introduce it to my 7-year-old daughter, and she was not interested.
I mean, many sweaty men.
I mean, yeah, maybe my nephews would have been more interested, and maybe your son would have lapped it up. I don't know. There's lots more pew pew pew. But yeah, all was having none of it. So shall we get into other suspicious spin-offs?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about, what other film could have been a spin-off from this? It could, were things like sets or script, or was anything reused? This was canon in the dark years.
So yeah, apparently at the Cannes Festival in 1987, Menahem Golan announced, he was like one of the partners, the co-owners of Canon, announced Dolph Lundgren was set to reprise his role as He-Man, and he'd already signed on for 2 more movies. However, Lundgren refused to reprise his role because he was filming Red Scorpion at the time, and went on record in 1989 saying he felt playing He-Man was his lowest point as an actor. So he quickly turned down any chance of appearing in a sequel. However, a Masters of the Universe sequel was actually written and cast. So those who love a Marvel post-credits thing, there is a post-credits teaser at the end of this film with Skeletor crawling out of the pit saying, "I'm back." So yes, there was a sequel written.
I missed that, and probably was dying for the toilet when I was like 7 years old or something and watched it the first time. So I don't. That's new to me, listeners.
So yeah, there you go. They had teased it. There was a director, Albert Pyun, proposed to the producers at Canon, Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus, that he would make a sequel to Masters of the Universe. And at the time, Canon, as I say, were, on a roll, and they'd bought the rights, as well as the rights to Superman. They had the rights to Spider-Man.
Well, what year was this?
This is late 80s. So
wow, a late 80s Spider-Man film. Wow. So
yeah, this was like, Spider-Man's gone through massive production.
Not enough. We need more Spider-Man films.
No, but until from the 80s to the 90s, it went through massive production hell. And there's a great podcast series. Check it out. It's called The Best Movies Never Made. And they do like a 5-episode arc all about the unmade Spider-Man films. And I think at least 1, if not 2, of the episodes cover the Canon Films adaptations. And I think when Canon got their hands on it, I think it was Menahem Golan thought it was Spider-Man was a horror movie. It was just like,
oh really? It was because he's a man with,
but it's like just on the title alone, he's a man, but he's also a spider and he's got 8 arms. And it's just like, no, he's actually a comic book character. So yeah, they had the rights to Spider-Man. So they were like, well, why don't we, we'll make a Masters Universe 2, we'll make Spider-Man, we'll reuse, I don't know how, we'll film them back to back in North Carolina at the De Laurentiis studio in North Carolina. So sets for the 2 movies were built, costumes were made, and both films had been cast, and the budget was set for Masters of the Universe Part 2 was set for $4.5 million. Mattel gave their approval to many of the characters that would appear in the sequel, and they'd recast He-Man was to be played by the surfer Laird Hamilton, apparently.
Who?
I don't know. I've never seen him in anything. So apparently Albert Pyun's script treatment was Skeletor go back to Earth after being defeated by falling into the pit in the finale of the first movie. Skeletor would then disguise himself as an evil industrialist known as Aaron Dark, who destroyed most of the world before He-Man can arrive on Earth to stop him. And Master Universe Part 2 would end with Earth devastated as a post-nuclear world. But as a result, as a canon, were going through some tough financial times. And whilst they had films from Van Damme and Chuck Norris and Charles Bronson, I think they were doing the various Death Wish movies sort of to keep them afloat. They basically ran out of money and had to scrap both films, and they would ultimately be turned into the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie Cyborg. So those sets and costumes for Masters of the Universe 2 and the aborted Spider-Man film would then turn into something completely different.
Funny story. George and I have recently watched Cyborg, and it's an interesting movie. Would you say not, brother?
Absolutely. So yes,
a bit of a revelation, one might say.
Yes. So speaking of revelations, on our Patreon channel, we have reviewed the movie Cyborg with Van Damme because we ashamedly have never seen it before. So it is
can't believe this gem passed us by.
So yes, we have finally got around to watching it to tie in perfectly with Masters of the Universe. So if you are interested in hearing more about Cyborg and our thoughts on that film, head over to our Patreon channel, Retro Ramble on patreon.com.
Where we will be spending 90 seconds talking about the really long and wordy script of that film. Check it out. It is, I think, George, it'll be a short episode, but I think there will be some extremities visited. So it's not the typical revelations. It's maybe not your... like the Warriors, and what else have we done on Roadhouse?
Yeah, so we have there are other revelations. We've done Roadhouse, we've done the Warriors, we've done some recent the cinema releases. So we've done Top Gun Maverick, we've done Spider-Man No Way Home,
Matrix, whatever they called that Matrix film.
And we've done, if you're into your Bond films, we've done some stuff on Bond for No Time to Die, and we're currently doing some stuff to celebrate 60 years of Bond. So plenty of comments.
There's more stuff coming to Patreon. Are there any final thoughts? Oh, okay, I think you've danced around the subject a little bit in this. Apologies if you have covered this, but have we got more Masters of the Universe to come? I mean, I'm not talking about the Netflix show, or maybe that's my question. Has the success of the Netflix show maybe put a future film in the coffin?
I say there is currently one in production. There has been some random that has been cast. I don't even know who the director.
This is the Dreamboat High School guy you're talking about. Yeah. Okay, so it's not going to be a big promotion then.
Yeah,
it's nothing right now. It's nothing right now. Okay,
it's an odd one. So there's a teaser poster on IMDb that says The Power returns March 2021. That didn't happen.
Okay, we may have missed the mark.
So yes, it's starring Kyle Allen. I have no idea who Kyle Allen is. Aaron Nee and Adam Nee are the directors. Nee. So yeah, I haven't really got high hopes for that.
Okay.
Oh, I've just seen in trivia, Dolph Lundgren wanted Chris Hemsworth to play He-Man, but Hemsworth turned down the role due to similarities with Thor. This brings me on to my final point, comparing Masters of the Universe 1987 to the first Thor movie. He's a blonde, muscly man with
a sword, hammer,
that gets sent to Earth.
From Bingley Bong Land.
From Spaceland, Magic Spaceland, loses his powers, has to help out with some plucky Earth people. Then evil people come to the small town, start wrecking it.
He fires up. Does it have like 3 back on his home planet?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think, it's something about those 7 types of story that we keep coming back to. So yeah, it is so basically Thor... But I think a remake of Masters of the Universe. You heard it here first, people.
I'm putting it out there, even if maybe the original Masters of the Universe might have ripped off the Thor comics, but let's not get into that.
Let's not go that far. Okay, nothing else for me to add on this. I hope you've enjoyed this. This has just been a freshly retro ramble. Just one of those usual retro rambles that we fire out. A film that was close to George and I's hearts for many a reason. Can we reveal what retro ramble we'll be covering next? But people, we're going to some interesting places. after covering a late 80s film, you know, George and I are in our groove now. So after we do a film from 87, we're likely to go back to early 80s or the wonderful 90s.
Beautiful 90s. Hang on, just bear with me, Sailor.
I was gonna put it out to the audience and say if they want to let us know in between now and George confirming if there's anything.
I do have down on my list Broken Arrow,
Travolta, Slater,
John Woo.
Denver.
Yeah. And multiple exploding helicopters. So
lots of nukes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
we should get Dad on for that because you went to see that at cinema with Dad, didn't you?
Yeah, I conned Dad in to take me to see that. yeah, it's a good thriller. It's a bit like Clear and Present Danger. That'll do. Yeah, so we've got Broken Arrow, some 90s fun in the mix.
Okay. And some doves. No doubt some doves. It's
unless Charlie and I hear any different, but yeah, we might do that.
There's going to be some doves. There's going to be some doves. There's going to be some slow-mo. Looking forward to it. Okay, so for this episode, this has been a Retro Ramble production. I've been Charlie McGee.
I've been George McGee.
And we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Skeletor to King Randor. Skeletor to King Randor. Come in, you royal boob.